On the one hand, I'm not really into criminal noir thriller type comic books, but on the other hand, this is pretty good. Howdy, I'm Kurt Williams, and today we're looking at issue 1 of The One Hand by Ram V and Laurence Campbell, and we're looking at issue 1 of The Six Fingers by Dan Watters and Sumit Kumar. If you can't tell by the very similar designs on these two covers done by the great Tom Mueller, these two series are connected. It's the same concept approached from two different angles in two different series, which is really cool. I'll start by getting into issue 1 of The One Hand, because this one came out first. So Ram V and Laurence Campbell are two really great creators, but this issue kind of failed to interest me. We're following this grumpy old detective Ari, who's retiring at the beginning of this issue. But of course he gets pulled right back in when this serial killer resurfaces that he's already put in jail twice. Not the same person two separate times, two separate people. Over those two killers, there were 32 victims, and at every single crime scene, there were these weird symbols written in blood on the walls that were never released to the public, so there's no way that somebody could just be a copycat killer. So unless those people know each other or something, maybe the serial killer returned from the dead? We don't know. At the end of the first issue, the big clue that he gets is that whoever committed this murder and put their handprint on the wall might have a sixth finger, which leads into the other series, but we'll get to that in a second. Overall, this issue felt like just a bunch of cliches strung together. It didn't feel like it stands out or has anything fresh to offer. The world building is very similar to every other futuristic detective story you've ever seen. We gotta have a robot brothel. It's not a gritty futuristic detective story if you don't have one of those. And we've even got this guy on the street corner preaching about people dying or the end of the world or whatever in a very Watchmen-esque way. And I'm not even sure what that contributes to the story yet. Maybe that'll be cleared up later, but so far it just kind of seemed like a waste of space. So we've got a creepy serial killer and we've got a hardened detective who has to come out of retirement to find the serial killer. I'm sorry, it might just be because I'm not really into this genre, but that is just such a tired idea to me. I'm not interested. Before I move on to the Six Fingers, I'll talk about some things I did like in the issue, because it was still well done, even though it wasn't really my cup of tea. In this first scene, we see Ari doing his exit psychoanalysis session to make sure that he's fine before he's released into the world. And they've interspliced all these panels of like a ticking clock and those Newton beads or whatever they are that keep bouncing into each other, or this bird that keeps bobbing up and down into a glass of water, or that weird oil fracking perpetual motion physics toy that every science teacher has on their desk. And I would guess that the intention behind splicing all those pictures in, setting the scene, was to give us this sense of unrest with the character. Which would make sense that we're supposed to feel like something is incomplete, still in process, when this guy still hasn't caught this serial killer that he thought he caught years ago. So I did like that. That was a really good way of getting that feeling across. This flashback sequence they did where he discusses opening up a combination lock on a briefcase just by trying every single number was a really great way of showing us his character instead of just telling us what kind of person he is. It still doesn't make him that unique of a character, but at least we got shown what kind of character he is in a unique way. There's this scene where Ari chases down this guy who's spray painting handprints by using like a mannequin hand, and for all Ari knows, maybe all this guy wants is to draw some happy Thanksgiving turkeys wearing pilgrim hats. But he tackles him because it's a handprint and it's red paint, so it's gotta be connected to the serial killer. And it turns out that it isn't connected, but it is a very weird coincidence. It felt like a very specific coincidence, and I don't like it. Makes me suspicious. And as for the art, Laurence Campbell is a very accomplished artist who's been around for a while, and he makes great stuff. And this art is perfect at setting the tone for the series. It's really capturing the mood of this neo-noir criminal thing. It's not my favorite style personally, mostly because of the way that he draws faces, but everything else I think is really well done. His work with shadows is really solid. And I've seen pictures of his work on Hellboy titles, and those look great. So what it really comes down to is that this is just not my style, but if you're into this kind of thing, it's really good stuff, and you should read it. However, I would not recommend picking up this series if this was a standalone series. What makes this series so good is the parallel series, The Six Fingers. Now, I'm not familiar with Dan Watters or Sumit Kumar. I know they do a lot of things over at DC, and I don't read much DC, but I was very surprised at the quality in this issue. It starts with this monologue about the never-ending pursuit of knowledge, of conquest, of fiercely seeking out new information. Then as soon as we have it, we look towards the next thing that we can fiercely seek out. And that just really connected with me. That was speaking my language right there. I was instantly hooked in this issue. And then, to make it even better, we go into this scene that's basically a direct ripoff from Atlantis: The Lost Empire, the animated movie. And I love that movie. I just watched it last month for like the 20th time. Oh look, it's a very clever yet goofy archaeologist who wants to go on a crazy expedition to maybe find a thing that's mostly just a fantasy. Like, I get that I just complained about the last issue being cliche, but this is a cliche that I really like. So the goofy archaeologist boy, Johannes, doesn't get his funding, of course, and as he's getting ready for his shift at the power factory, he finds this weird red sticky stuff in his bag, but we don't have any time to think about that because there's battery acid all over the factory, and if it doesn't get cleaned up soon, he's gonna miss out on his evening plans. Oh no! And he's smart, he knows how to fix it. The company just doesn't want him to go fix it because that's a liability because of all that battery acid. But he doesn't want to stand around waiting for the robot guys to come do it because then he's gonna miss out on his date later in the day. So he puts on his special suit and he goes in there and he manually starts the vents or whatever they are and he cleans up the mess, but they catch him and he's in trouble. And as his boss is yelling at him about the effects of radiation on somebody, we find out that he has a tiny little sixth finger. So he loses his job and then he goes to this art gallery that his girlfriend invited him to, where he proceeds to invite his girlfriend to break up with him before she can say it because he knew she was gonna do it. And that whole conversation, by the way, is just really well written. I love all that dialogue. It's just a couple of really well fleshed out characters having a really truthful conversation. It feels so authentic. And then as he leaves, he realizes that the reason his presentation on the expedition earlier went poorly, the reason that he didn't have all of the notes for the expedition that he had spent the entire last night writing, was because he had not been working on his expedition notes all night long. He had been murdering somebody and then writing a bunch of weird symbols on a wall all night long. But he couldn't remember thinking about it at all. He was just on autopilot the entire time. But this character's whole thing is that nothing is more exciting than the unknown, that sense of conquest of information. So now he has a big fat mystery right in front of him that he's wrapped up in, and you can tell by this excellently placed, very subtle, tiny grin that he gives us that he's really excited about this weird development in his life. So story-wise, I was blown away by the Six Fingers. I love the characters, I love all of the scenes, nothing felt like wasted space, and I'm really interested to see how this character Johannes deals with this weird primal urge that he has. So what we've learned is that there's something on almost a spiritual level that's taking seemingly random people and making them commit the exact same crimes with these weird symbols. It's like the base code of reality or something. And in the Six Fingers, it's tackling this concept in sort of a expedition into uncharted waters kind of angle. And in this series, it's exploring the exact same concept from a gritty crime thriller angle, which is so cool. I do feel like between the two, the Six Fingers is better, and if you're only going to read one of them, I would read the Six Fingers. But reading the one hand does enhance your experience of reading the Six Fingers, so I would recommend reading them both. There's one really cool crossover between the two series that really connects them, and that's this scene here where Ari bumps into Johannes right outside the crime scene. And when I read that in the one hand, nothing happened. It was just two panels of a guy bumping into the main character, and I thought, well, that's kind of a waste of space. Why would you put extra panels on a page that you don't really need? So then my next thought was, well, I'll probably see that exact scene again in the Six Fingers. And I was right. We have the exact same scene in the Six Fingers where they bump into each other, but it's from a different perspective, which is super cool. There's also this first page in Six Fingers that shows weird stuff going on at the murder scene, and that scene was also in the one hand, but I think I like the art style in the Six Fingers better for this scene. I just don't love the way that Campbell is drawing these fingers. They look like moldy hot dogs, whereas in the Six Fingers I really like the way the hands are drawn. It's really hard to draw hands in a way that looks natural, but the line weight he's got going on here really suggests a sense of form. I also think that in general it's a lot easier to understand Sumit Kumar's art. It's just got details that are a lot more crisp, and the sense of depth in the panels is a lot more apparent, and the faces especially I think convey a lot more emotion. Like this face right here I really liked, and these two faces followed by just that pair of eyes at the bottom of the page, these all had a lot of emotion on them. So overall, these two series in tandem are a really great package, and I'm really excited to see how they handle the same concept from two totally different angles. I like the Six Fingers as a standalone series a lot better than the one hand, but if you're gonna get one, you might as well get both. So as a package, I'm gonna give the Six Fingers and the one hand a 9 out of 10. It's a really cool new take on old ideas, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. Did you read it? What do you think?